Well, before we start in proper, I just want the listeners to know that I'm not actually this pasty white, and he's not actually that tan.
No,
oh,
I'm not.
there you
We're
go.
about
There you
even.
go. Yeah, it is the wonders of lighting.
I don't get that much sun.
Anyways, so what do we have here? We have Mama Rebernik's bouncing baby boy in the flesh.
Here I am.
What's going on, man? It's been a while since we've
PJs.
sat down and had a proper conversation.
Yeah, it's good. I
You
feel like we got a lot of ground to cover. I'm gonna get nice and long here.
all right? Look at that. I mean, you're still in the camera angle, so as
Nice-
long as
nice
you're
and-
still in
yeah,
the camera
right
angle,
here.
yeah,
Kind of lounge about, in my most relaxed form.
you're very. I'm in your final state. you're becoming Rebernik.
Yeah, that's it. Almost completely horizontal.
I'll be honest. We've been meaning to do this for a little bit now, but I'm happy that we're doing it now because I feel like I can have a more genuine conversation with you because I actually now. So this is. Let me give you a bit of a backstory here.
Sure.
So obviously, I was always able to separate the training aspect of things from our friendship and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
But I'll be honest with you, man. There was a long period of time where I resented you in the context of training.
Oh, that's very sweet of you.
Not your job training.
Yeah.
I'm talking about your training. Like you actually lifting and seeing progress.
Oh, like me personally.
You personally.
Okay.
Not your job. I profited off of your training.
Yeah,
I'm a big fan of your training.
That one you couldn't have resented me
Yes,
for.
I did not
like,
resent.
God damn, if you fucking resented me for that, I don't know what more I could have done.
No, not in any way that. I'm
Yeah.
talking about your progress, your linear progression
Yeah.
as a lifter.
That was not linear. It was not linear though either.
It was a conjugate.
Yeah.
But anyhow, it's funny because I saw in you as you were training the same amount of drive and determination and joy that I used to draw from that activity.
Yeah.
And we encountered each other at a time where you never got to meet that version of me.
Yeah. Like you're meeting your past self.
Yeah. And I mean, I would get into arguments sometimes where I was the one, not arguments like let's say discussions between you and I, where I was the one justifying why not to train, or I was the one justifying why maybe this isn't so good for me anymore. And it always felt strange because it was I can't express to you with enough clarity to suggest how much of that person, how much I was not that person.
Yeah.
And I now realize that there were certain installations in my life that prevented me from being that person. And now that they are gone, I can now again enjoy that. Over the quarantine, I've been able to recapture that. Once I was able to access an actual facility again, I was able to overcome that. And, I feel like we can actually have a discussion about it now. And I imagine training, among other topics of its ilk is probably going to come up today. But
Yeah.
we can actually talk about it now
Yeah.
without me being just like, taking up a position or a mantle that I don't actually genuinely represent,
Right.
because I'm back in a place where I can now enjoy it again. So perhaps even though we're late on this, the timing is perfect.
Yeah. Well, it's a good topic to start on. So I also I think just like training progress isn't linear. Your enjoyment of that is not linear, and it can't be with anything that you do. I think there's definitely a time where things will get stale or just honestly sometimes just straight up fucking boring. And sometimes it's hard for me to let things get that way, so I have to invent new ways to keep it interesting. Sometimes I love fucking nitpicking the shit out of myself, and just it's effective sometimes, but it's also can be if you just pick one thing. It's like cueing with somebody. I remember when I would start training somebody and you get super excited and you want to just fucking dump 30 fucking cues on them.
Yeah.
And I just no, this is you can't teach anybody anything doing that, right? But going back to what I was saying before is for me, my job was to train people, and part of my job in order to I think about if I want to do this for a long time and I want to develop a system or a way of training people that doesn't cap itself out, you have to be keep getting better. If you have a very shallow skill set, then I can't expect my clients to stick around for long if my job is to teach them. Now, if my job is like disingenuous, where I'm just doing enough to like show them, like I'm kind of like giving them fish every day rather than like, you know, the classic teaching them to fish.
Sure.
Then like I can dance around that all day and just take payment. But in order for me to like continually teach people and get like satisfaction from my job, I have to like continually learn. So I have to like push through those, like, all right, this is boring right now, but there's still stuff that I can learn that I need to do from this, and I expect this. I want the same standard of work from the people that I work with, because, you know, it's like one thing for me to like to train, but I'm going to go through the same problems they're going to go through. Giving them a training program that is the same stuff, like it doesn't need to change all the time. Well, if you can't stick to something, I think we know this well, right? If you can't stick to something for, you know, 3 months, 4 months, 5 months, 6 months, maybe longer than that.
Yeah.
I can't have that conversation with somebody that I'm training and say, look, like, if you stick this out long enough, it will pay off, right?
Yeah.
So part of that is like just doing the shit you got to do. Unfortunately, it's just like everything else, you know. Like, you know, to be fair, you're gonna be like, I don't fucking want to make a podcast today, or I don't want to do this today. And
Yeah.
then it's like the same thing. It's like once you get it moving, it's like get yourself in the door. That kind of just goes away.
Well, let me ask you this, dude. This is another question while we're beginning with the topic of training here that I've always wanted to ask you, because it's intriguing to me, because your route to this as a profession was very circuitous, as was mine. However, it was very unlike mine in that what always was interesting to me is that a lot of people who get obsessed with strength and conditioning start as athletes who participate in a strength and conditioning program.
Yeah.
To the best of my knowledge, that is not you.
No, it's not at all.
I don't think you participated in any sports in high school, right?
Not in high school, like in intermediate school, middle school. But I was like really competitive. So I always had that like competitive drive, but it was like with like gaming or like just like trying to like do, like I can tell you, like when I was younger and I would be into like game, like I would just like strategy a lot. Like I just liked, like for example, when I would look at like a game or something that I was playing competitively with somebody or just online and trying to like be good, like I would always be like, there'd always be this like fantasy that I was going to compete in it, and I was going to do it in a way that like I had thought of something different and I'd figure out a route, which is like, you know, a fantasy in itself sometimes, but it's enough motivation for me to like keep tinkering with stuff and keep fucking with things enough that like when it came to training, that same like perspective was still there. You know what I mean?
Well, now that you've discovered training as such a passion of yours, do you look back upon those years where you were directing your energy and your competitive energy specifically towards things like gaming, and do you look at that almost as like wasted time or a misallocation of resources now? Because now that seems like something you would not ridicule, but you know, you would question.
Like, I think the answer to that is like yes and no. There was like, so gaming for me, I remember when I was younger, was like mostly a thing that probably came about when I was young, because I didn't have the opportunity to like, I lived on a busy road and I didn't have like anybody around me. So it was like, and my parents were not like around most of the time. I think my mom worked nights and my dad worked nights, or like they were both busy all the time. We'll say that. And if they weren't busy, they were busy like we were taking care of the house or something like that.
Yeah.
So I didn't go out and get to see friends very often, I think, till like middle school. So I was like kind of like raised on just, you know, entertain yourself, like figure out what you want to do.
Yeah.
Just, you know, just leave me alone. You know. But all my friends too were like kind of into that. Like we weren't like, you know, into sports really. We were just kind of like, we were kind of like into like, you know, superheroes and like video game characters, and like we'd make games up and shit like
nerds.
That. Yeah, kind of like that was the thing though. And like music and shit like that. Kind of nerd. I kind of feel like I kind of sat in that like half music, kind of like half nerd. Like I could hang out with like nerdy kids. I could hang out like nerdy kids. Like I still hang out with them. You know. that sounds kind of fucked up, but like I don't mean it any type.
You still
of
give them the time of day.
Yeah, no,
You don't steal their lunch money anymore.
No, but I would hang out with them. I would go to like metal shows in Jersey all the time. I had friends like like I would go to parties all the time. So I was like in a bunch of different like social circles and stuff like that. But I think growing up too is like, I don't know. I like went through like a bunch of different like I guess like identities almost. I felt like when I was young.
Yeah.
That I like also was like I don't really have that anymore. That's maybe another conversation, but I think lifting came from more of like that, like, for me it was more of it was like a way of like the reason I like it, right, and the reason why I think it's like super, not even like it can be really anything, right, but it's like to me it's very like comparable, I guess you could say, to like anything you want to do in life. Like I think we've talked about this before, and I like to share that with people. Right?
The linear periodization of life.
Yeah, like it gives you some structure, gives you some sort of like reward, both short and long term. I guess some depending on how you train, it can be just all short term reward. But if you get smart enough, it's definitely has its long term benefits too. And then there's just the I think also too what I like about a lot of things is I'm very like addicted to things. I'm either on or I'm off of them.
Yeah.
And like exercise and fitness and however we want to classify this can literally go on forever. Like I can think about it. I can think about periodizing or structuring a program probably 10 million different ways, and like what's the way I can make this like perfect. Like
what's that movie with the giant like white dragon thing? Is it The Never-Ending Story?
Never-Ending Story. I was also thinking of Spirited Away.
Spirited Away. Okay.
Anime movie.
Anyways, continue.
Yeah. I like thinking, because the other thing too, man, is like it's just sometimes like I walk around life, and this is like, again, this is me. I'm probably a little bit jaded here, but sometimes I just think people could just think a little bit more, like think about the things you do.
Yeah.
And there's so often times like you just go through the motions, whether I'm just watching people train in the gym, and if I can just get them to like plant that seed, just think a little bit more and get them excited, that kind of like has that like rippling effect, because there's so many things that are involved in you to maintain your fitness or develop your fitness, is like sleeping, eating, recovering, how you plan things, how you plan the rest of your life, and like, you might start to think about all those things a little bit differently, and then how you spend your time, and then, then how you structure your business or whatever it might be, or how you structure relationships, or good and bad, and good or bad exercise, like something that's good, an exercise that's good for you, a person that is good or bad for you,
Fitness is one of the few things that is actually, it's a good end destination that you can get to from a place of low self-confidence.
Yeah.
It's one of the few. And it's probably one of the few. It's a lot of times you see people turn to fitness after hitting some variation of rock bottom, or at least as they perceived it to be.
Right.
And it's kind of the most healthy lever to pull when you find that yourself in that situation. I know for me, fitness was very different in that it was the first thing that I felt I was genuinely good at.
Right.
I was very shy. Growing up, still am to many, which may or may not be surprising to someone like you who's seen me in a professional context where I'm just yapping all day.
Yeah, you're a good talker.
Yeah, and I was always a good talker, but it was very difficult for me. I've always felt as if there was some sort of gradient that I never was able to successfully pass through in regards to expressing myself properly, or expressing myself in a way that I felt was adequate, akin to what I felt I may have to share.
Yeah.
And that ails me today. I'm far from an expert on that. I mean, this is one of many stabs in an effort to solve that problem. But, fitness had two critical ingredients. Number one, I could do it in the dark. I could do it in the absence of
like
observation.
Your Batman cave.
It was the Batman. Yeah. It's the Batman complex. As someone who struggles with the Batman complex, which we can talk about, it was the perfect, it was the perfect option for someone in that situation. And I was also someone with a pretty low amount of self-confidence physically, because I grew up fat.
Yeah.
I struggle to say there are people who genuinely had weight problems, and I don't want to put myself in that category, but I just was fatter than I would have preferred to be. throughout middle school, high school.
Right. If you were to pick something you were self-conscious about, like
Correct.
comparable to, my 600-pound life, whatever it is.
Yeah.
You weren't anywhere near that, but that
No.
was your, thing.
Yeah, I mean, I was probably 250, 260 at
Yeah.
my heaviest, so it's not, I'm not coming from a place of, having to be cut out of my house or anything like that.
Yeah.
And, everything is taken to the extremes now. Like, that's not even,
Well, that's what we like, too.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, Jesus, look at the fucking debates we've had over the past few weeks.
Yeah.
It was, it's interesting to me because I don't know a ton about, I know this version of you, but I can't say I know a ton about your backstory because we've just never really talked about that.
Yeah.
But I remember you showed me a picture of you when you were in high school, and you were a tiny little dude.
Yeah, man.
I mean, you were probably half, it's fair to say you were half of my body weight.
Yeah. What's your body weight right now, if you don't mind me asking?
Well, when I graduated high school, I was 240.
Yeah, I was like, dude, I was actually less than half your body weight.
That's
like 100,
truly incredible.
1,518. Dude, like, I didn't even think about eating food.
Yeah.
I swear to God. I remember I wake up for high school and I would pound some coffee and I would carry a thermos around and I probably would skip lunch and go and smoke weed.
Yeah.
Something like that and just fuck around.
Under the steps with the cool kids.
Yeah,
under the bleachers, excuse me.
Not the bleachers. We would we had I had friends who were older than me. So I always knew somebody with a car or something like that. And we would, just fucking leave school for 2 hours and just I would sneak back in somehow and I didn't give a shit. I was one of those kids I was
fucking rebel without a cause you were.
Those were my years of nihilism.
Yeah.
Just nothing fucking mattered. I was pretty smart, but I didn't have to study very much. And I feel like that's definitely a lot of people. I'm definitely not unique in that situation at all. But it comes to bite you in the ass when you're all right, all your friends are gone. You're still at home. You're graduating it's high school. I'm 17.
Yeah.
And you're just all right, well now I'm floating in the nether. What the fuck am I doing here?
Yeah.
And your parents are you should do this. I'm dude, when have I ever listened to you guys about what I should do? As far as I know, I'm that ain't gonna work.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, it was kind of you're floating around. You have all these options, and it's having too many options the worst thing sometimes.
Preach.
Yeah, for
Preach.
so many people, and it's sometimes I compare it to when you go to a diner, right? You sit down at the diner and they have a 5-6 page menu.
Yeah.
And you're always you always pick the same thing. It's I go to a diner and there's maybe 2 things I'll order. It's either it's 90% of the time it's breakfast. And if it's 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock, I might get the disgusting sandwich. And it's it's
that may actually be titled just that.
Yeah, it's something like that, in Jersey.
The kitchen sink sandwich or
well, so we have
the Jersey Turnpike sandwich.
Yeah, we have in Rutgers they have these fat sandwiches or whatever they're called. It's pretty much just it is disgusting, but it's delicious.
Yeah.
It's you have decent bread, but the bread doesn't fucking matter because the whole thing is just starch. But it's French fries.
Gravy, definitely some gravy.
Chicken,
on that
no,
sandwich.
not that's probably one of the options, but chicken tenders, tons of cheese, honey mustard, and just mayonnaise. It's just nasty. It's terrible for you, but you might get something like that. But my point is you of the 200 options that are on the table, right? You're only going to pick 2 of them, right? Whereas if you go a nice I don't know, let's take this restaurant on the corner that I see over here. I forget what it's called, the Fish or something like
Little
that.
Fish. And now you're revealing my location. The people are going to find me.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's Little Fish.
Little Fish. They probably have probably maybe 12 things on their menu.
I almost made a joke, by the way.
Yeah.
I was going to say, was that your nickname in high school?
The little Fish. Joe
Anyway,
Fish.
continue.
Yeah, it's just why the fuck you can't narrow anything fucking down because you don't know what you want. You know what I mean? So.
Is this a criticism pointed directly at me? Because it's very applicable.
Oh, no, not even at all. I'm just speaking in general from personal experience.
It could be. It very well could be, or perhaps should be.
But that's my point is I think this is not unique in any way.
Yeah.
But we know kind of going to school, You ever used to take like aptitude tests and stuff like that?
Sure.
And like, despite whether they're accurate or not, they might give you like an idea of what you want to do.
Or did you take the one where it would give you like potential career fields in which you may prosper?
Yeah, that's what I'm kind of like talking about. Like, you don't really get that in high school, and like the only thing you get are like what your parents think you should do. And if you're a normal teenager, you're resentful and rebellious anyway, so you go in the opposite direction. Yeah, my point is like I didn't know what I wanted to do, and I also didn't really think anybody knew what what they wanted to do either.
Sure.
So there was this like, the only thing I wanted to do was like be free. You know, it was like I just wanted, like, I knew I could never sit in a cubicle.
Yeah.
I did not want a boss that I had to answer to because I was going to have a better way of doing things. Yeah, I was one of those kids. You know what I mean? And it can be like really good, but at the same time, it's like, yeah, you got to kind of like check your ego a little bit.
Yeah.
And that kind of situation too, like I feel like kids like me probably should not go to school right away or like anything like that, like go and like work and go and see how the world actually is. Actually, you know what you should do? You should be miserable for a long time working for minimum wage. Be miserable for a really long time and get yourself in a situation where you move to a new city and you make no money and you're overworked and tired and you have to train people at 6 o'clock in the morning and go to your job at 4 o'clock.
You'll
be motivated to figure out what the fuck you want to do.
There is a lack of appreciation to figure out there's a lack of appreciation for people who move. I mean, that is a tremendously difficult thing to do. I can feel you on that 1,000%.
Yeah.
I moved here in 2014. I am just now getting my feet underneath me.
Yeah, well, I think there's like a lot of like...
I mean, it depends on context, of course. There's a lot of nuance in something like this. Like if you move to a place where you know a bunch of people, you have an infrastructure socially,
that can be good
professionally.
Or bad. That can go either way.
Yeah, truth.
But it might even be better to move somewhere and become like nobody.
That's what I did.
You know, like know absolutely no one and have to start from scratch where you don't have any like credibility with anybody.
Yeah.
Right? Like you can't get by on just your name.
Yeah.
Right? Like you have to like kind of rebuild that for yourself and like also kind of like figure out who you actually are.
Yeah.
Because also too when you're younger, like you have this idea of who you are, but you're like young and your self-esteem's in a certain place and like part of who you are is kind of like also probably based on what people tell you are.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And like you're like I told you, I probably had like like I still am into all sorts of types of different music, but like I was one of those kids who bounced around. Like I had like fucking long fucking hair and I wore like skinny jeans and like would go to like hardcore shows and shit like that.
Nice.
There's like an age like where I would only listen to fucking like hip hop. I had like when I was younger, I would like wear like fucking like collared shirts and just like a lot of it felt like around clothing, but like you identify with that.
Yeah.
And you're trying to find this like team or this tribe or whatever the fuck it is.
Yeah.
So when you move on your own, it's like, all right, well, what are you? And you know,
it's
figure that out with any outside influence.
I compare it almost to becoming sober after a period of time.
Yeah.
A long period of time where you were not.
Or getting healthy, just in general.
Well, I know in my own experience, when discussing with my therapist about what it's like being sober, I often describe it as being a baby again. Because you experience everything again. God damn it.
Yeah.
That update sound just kind of that just I don't know what updated, but I hate it.
Yeah.
But anyways, when you first become sober, you experience everything for the first time again. You experience your friends for the first time again. You experience bars and restaurants for the first time again. You experience, you name it. And
fun for the first time.
Yeah.
Again. I think that's a big one.
You're, whether or not you even have an accurate analysis as to what fun is for you.
Yeah. Sometimes you realize you don't even know how to probably have fun.
Yes. Correct.
There was definitely a point in my life where I kind of like worried myself, right? Because I would like just fucking, like I sold weed and for like a long time. Like that's like nothing.
I was going to say, what's clearly indicate that you said sold, not sell, just in case?
Sold. Like in the past, like also under 18.
Yeah.
Yeah, like, and I would just smoke weed all day and just like
smoke weed every day,
fucking out all night and taking like just all sorts of fucking fun things.
Yeah.
But after a while, like it's this is gonna kind of like transition to like overstimulation kind of maybe talk that we might maybe get into.
Yeah.
It's like you're stimulated so long that anything like normal just doesn't fucking do it for you, and it's like such a fucking huge problem. This is something that can go like in every direction right now.
I think when it, I think for me, what alcohol and related substances were the lowest common denominator fun. It was the easy lever to pull fun.
Yeah.
Right? Because it didn't require me to ask any particularly difficult questions of myself. It didn't cause me to have to ask whether or not I really liked certain people that were in my life. It didn't, you just take a situation and you douse it in alcohol, and generally it works out relatively fun for all.
Well, it's also like if you're, like you had mentioned, like some people don't feel comfortable like being spontaneous.
Yeah.
I definitely like have that sometimes for sure. It depends on my comfort level with people.
Especially when you're a planned, lack of a better phrase, periodized person.
Well, that's how I am now. When I was younger, I was like, I felt honestly way more spontaneous. I was like, fucking insane when I was a kid. But what I was going to say is, if you don't feel comfortable being in your own skin sometimes, like alcohol, can just help you do that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it's like, I kind of like being free. I kind of like, but there's a cost for that.
A tremendous cost.
I mean? There's a huge cost for it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Metabolically expensive, psychologically expensive. Alcohol is, it obviously I speak with tremendous bias because I'm someone who simply lacked the ability to process it correctly.
Yeah.
I hesitate to call myself an alcoholic because I have a little bit too much respect for that term. Because that's a brutal fucking life. That is a brutal situation for those who have it and for those around that person who has that.
Yeah.
So I hesitate to call myself an alcoholic, but I was definitely someone who just couldn't tolerate alcohol. And ironically enough, Jordan Peterson puts it perfectly. Where it's like, if you have this milieu of certain circumstances for a certain percentage of the population that have that, alcohol is just the silver bullet of silver bullets. And that's what leads to this almost like increased euphoric effect of alcohol.
Yeah.
That is the number one mechanism that I can say with certainty. I have no science to back this up, but I know in AA circles this goes around, but this idea of the euphoric effect of alcohol, I never needed any other drugs. A lot of people, when they heard about my binge drinking, they would say, "Oh, well, did you do other drugs?" I was like, "Well, maybe." I was blackout, so I have no idea, but I don't have any recollection of that, and they're always flabbergasted by it. And I would say I didn't need it.
Right.
I felt like I was on fucking ecstasy just after 6 or 7 beers, because whatever state of mind or metabolic state alcohol would put me in just did it for me. And then obviously, if some is good, more is better, which led to the overconsumption and to the subsequent blacking out and the shenanigans.
Yeah. It's almost like this is not. I'm not trying to make this blanket statement, but just speculative.
Yeah,
I guess we could say, but like it's
what we're
almost
doing
like
here.
your enjoyment of alcohol is like inversely proportional to how dissatisfied you are in your life. Sometimes.
That's Yeah.
I just look at sometimes I like just look at people and how much they drink, and I'm like, you don't have. It's kind of hard to have that much going on for you.
Well, and let me say this: as someone who's now, I haven't had fucking coffee in 5 years.
Yeah.
I've been a teetotaler. There you go. I've been a teetotaler to the extreme extent now for about 5 years, going on 6, I think. I don't know, somewhere in that range. I could do the math if I wanted to, but I would have to check out my friend. I know right before my friend got married is when I quit. But anywho, I don't actually think that sobriety. I think sobriety can be just as much of a crutch as substance use can.
Yeah.
Because as someone who has lived sobriety for 6 years now, it is sometimes sobriety is, and this may sound obvious, but I don't mean it to mean what I think a lot of other people would. I would perceive it a little differently. So what I mean is that sobriety is just as much of a potential red flag as a crutch as it would be for someone who has a substance abuse issue.
So you're saying that it can almost have the same kind of like drug-like effect if I'm...
You can hide behind sobriety,
right.
Just like you can hide behind substance
I would
use.
agree with you, yeah. It's another just like you're being extreme.
Yes.
You know what I mean? It's...
100%. It is from one extreme to the other.
Yeah. I always use the example sometimes when somebody learns a behavior is like wrong, what do? They kind of like just like, all right, well, so me being at 12 o'clock is wrong, I'm going to go to 6 o'clock.
Yeah.
Or like, oh, so being left was wrong, so I'm going to go right. It's
yeah.
like, can you just fucking like, but to be fair, like you may have to do that and then you'll learn like, oh, this isn't right, and then you'll navigate your way towards that like that path, right?
I struggle with this a lot. I mean, I talked to my therapist a lot about this, my list of cannots.
Yeah.
And it's a longer list than I wish it were.
Mm-hmm.
And the one phrase that I simply cannot get out of my mind is that the strongest version of me is one that does not have a list of cannots. But that's tough, especially when you're talking about a chemical or substance abuse issue, right? Like, the strongest version of me is one who would conquer their ability to control that substance use or avoid certain people. There are certain people in my life that I simply cannot. There was an opportunity I had socially the other night. A couple of friends of mine were going out to a restaurant, and it was the restaurant they were going to was adjacent to someone who I do not want to see.
Oh, okay.
Where they live. And I didn't go.
Yeah.
And I know for a fact, I think this is rather inarguable, that the strongest version of me is not only someone who would have went to that particular evening, but someone who does not fear that person at all.
Yeah.
I'm not there. And that is the work. I think that is the deepest, most difficult work that can be done, is when one confronts their lists of cannots. And that's facing the dragon.
Yeah,
I mean, those are usually the deepest, darkest dragons.
Yeah.
So, it's tough because oftentimes, when you're in a situation where like the complete removal of something or someone is the clear solution, everyone in your life is very concerned about your well-being and thus cannot give you very accurate advice.
Well, yeah, that's the whole thing. Is like
it's just preservation advice that they're giving you.
It's So I've like definitely run into this before, where I've had friends who would tell me, you work really hard, you're really great at what you do, but sometimes like you have to consider, one, where the advice is coming from, and two, why they're telling you that, right? Like, sometimes it is if you're a very mediocre person, right, and you can look at somebody like an anomaly, that it doesn't make you feel quite as bad about your situation.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And the same goes through for like people who talk negatively about you, right?
Yep.
Like, both people who praise you and talk negatively about you, there's something that's going on there, and there's some sort of like logic as to why they're doing that. That song by the Eurythmics, like "Sweet Dreams Are Made of These," or Marilyn Manson.
Mm-hmm.
It's like some of them want to use you, some of them want, the whole fucking line.
Want to abuse
you.
There's
a reason.
Some of them want to be used by you.
Yeah. There you go. And you can take some of what they say to you, but you're going to we take a lot of opportunities to be praised a lot of times, especially when we have low self-esteem, and we can kind of like trick ourselves and say, "Oh yeah, I am a really handsome boy. Yeah, I am a really hard worker." And like, what happens is like, yeah, I'm really hard, but you're not a hard worker. You just like appear working hard, and like you plateau and you get fucking lazy and you get comfortable and you're miserable. And you're like, "Well, I thought I was a hard worker," and it's like, "No, motherfucker, you're not. You just listen to a lazy person tell you're a hard worker." Like, the fuck.
Let me ask you a question. I agree with you. I agree with the premise of what you just said. And I want to take it one step further.
Yeah.
So, I don't have much use for praise.
Yeah.
I seek it.
Mm-hmm.
I like it. But a lot of times I've also found that it's very difficult to get genuine feedback. And when you get that genuine feedback and it's perhaps negative, you run from it.
Mm-hmm.
And, I think you and I have had a pretty good relationship. Like, you've definitely given me some negative feedback.
Yeah. That's important. I mean, I'm like wary of people who don't give me negative feedback.
Yeah. And
it's like, what do you want? I've definitely, I've had that situation before. I'm like, what the fuck do you want from me? Like, you're creeping me out, actually.
No, for sure. Yeah. And I think I've probably given you some negative feedback.
Yeah. I will ask you for it.
Yeah.
There's multiple times, like, I think, like, you remember as like, hey, what can I do better? Or, like, what am I not good at? Or, like, Well,
that was a teaching moment for me too, because you asked me that, and if I remember the situation correctly, I had a fair amount to say.
Yeah.
And I think you were kind of like, where the fuck was this?
Yeah.
Like, you had a lot to say. Like, why wasn't it being shared?
Yeah.
And I found that I have this peculiar habit. I probably wouldn't put you in this boat, but a lot of the people who I see very often in my life are extremely introverted, especially my male friends.
Yeah.
I have a lot of male friends. I have this. I don't consider myself to be. I have issues expressing myself, but overall, I'm not an introvert.
Yeah.
I'd say I'm, like most people, a hybrid. I'm somewhere in the between on the spectrum and can move on that spectrum. But I'm definitely not someone like the 2 or 3 people who I'm specifically thinking of that are close friends of mine are extremely introverted.
Yeah.
And I often find that our conversations just a lot of me criticizing them.
Mm-hmm.
And every now and again, they'll kind of come back and be like, man, like what's with all the criticism? Like there's no balance to this, but it's tough for me because I don't really see any utility. Like sometimes like there'll be a confrontation eventually. We have this negative feedback loop, and then there'll be a confrontation, and then I'll hit the brakes on the feedback. And it's just this like almost toxic failure to acknowledge the truth then. Because you end up just being like, oh, yeah, that's great. Yep, that's awesome. And they're telling you a situation that's a potential disaster. You know, as their friend who's removed from their life and has this third-person perspective of their life, you're able to say, oh, you're doing the same thing again.
Yeah.
You're in a pattern. This person is the same person as this last person. You're going to make the same mistake again. But they don't want to hear about the mistake. I guess what I'm really getting to is that there's this desire amongst a lot of people, and you could even kind of go macro here and think of this about certain political topics. There's this idea to hear pain, right? Like you need to be. I've encountered this issue with some relationships I've had in the past, where someone would express their problems to me, and I would offer feedback, and they'd say, sometimes I just don't want feedback. Sometimes I just want someone to listen and say, I hear you, I feel you, and I agree. I think that there is a place for that, but it's a small place relative to the feedback. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I think there's an art of doing that, right? Where it doesn't
Compliment sandwich.
That's like very like the surface way of doing it, but I think when you want to help someone or you want to have like a dialogue, especially right now, I think the most this is like a moment where I feel like old me is like giving young me like a lesson in how to like make less enemies.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Not even like nothing that I had a lot of enemies or anything like that.
Yeah,
but
no,
like,
I know what you mean.
But I was like I could be very like combative when I was younger for sure. And you have to make, I think one of the things that I find like is you kind of have to make people feel safe and not judged. Like criticism is tough because you can say it's coming from a good place, right? But like we're so like, especially right now, we're so like polarized these days that like for us to feel like we're not all on the same page, and it's ridiculous too. It's like, yeah, we can't all be on the same page, but if we're not, then we're an enemy.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So you have to show someone that you still can not get super passionate or like not condemn them for doing something. Like I've lived with like me and one of my best friends, right? Like we have a pretty good relationship, and that we're able to like kind of call each other out on bullshit.
Yeah.
And kind of help steer each other and suggest. But when we first started introducing that kind of idea, like it was fucking terrible, man. Like just fucking like it could, because it doesn't come from a good place. It came from a place of like low self-esteem. You know what I mean? It comes from like I recognize this fucking weakness in myself and I see it in that person, or that like I'm just really like it becomes just like we're just fucking like doing like a projection show at each other. Like it just fucking playing each other's internal movies at each other and getting mad and creating like a really poor environment for like actual like communication that like builds and gets better. You know, instead of it building like some level of like intimacy with your friends or your relationships, it just creates distance. So there's an art to it. There's like
there's a way to assuage it
Yeah.
prior to delivering the difficult news.
Yeah. Sometimes it's just simple as
Vulnerability is one. I mean, I had a situation where
Yeah.
a couple days ago I had a friend in a relationship problem.
Yeah.
And I questioned myself as like, am I genuinely trying to give him am I advising him to a place where he is going to be happier, or am I somehow being competitive and letting my competitive nature actually almost give him bad advice that would sabotage the situation.
Or do I just want to hear myself talk?
Or do I want to hear myself
Yeah,
talk?
that's the other thing too. It's like, well, I did this, and then like you get a high off of him doing the thing that you want to do, and when he rejects your advice, well, he shuts down your opportunity to get that high.
Yeah.
You would get because you know better. Right?
That itch goes unscratched.
Yeah.
But I started my criticism of him by saying, listen, man, I hope you can believe me after I share this with you, but, you know, I'm in a situation now where, like, our relationship means a lot because it's shut down. You know, our social groups are shrinking at a rapid pace.
Yeah.
And I need this guy. Like, he's a big part of my life. Mm-hmm. And I was like, I've examined whether or not I'm even giving you good advice because maybe I'm just afraid of losing this relationship or having it significantly reduced.
Yeah.
And now I feel more lonesome or less social or whatever the feeling I was afraid of feeling was. And I've questioned that, and I still want to tell you this.
Yeah.
After going through that analysis, and I felt like it was received on much more, favorable terms after. So I guess it was my version of a compliment sandwich.
Sure. Yeah.
But yeah, man, praise is just not super useful. I mean, it has a time and a place. You need good feedback if you're doing good things.
It's you know what? How do I put it? It's great when it feels like it's earned, I guess.
Sure.
But it's like that to me anyway. Like, it doesn't mean as much as like the outside. I would think doesn't mean as much as like when I know how much like time I've put into something and I get the result that I wanted. You know what I mean? Like that will always, I think, anyway. I don't really know. Like it's definitely nice to be recognized for things sometimes. But like I can trust my own, however objective I am with it. Like, I mean, it's probably pretty objective, right? Like I know how many hours, for example, I put into like, communicating with people and then learning how to teach and train people and like, coming up with some sort of like system or way that I've found that works to train people or to like periodize programs or like just work with people or like doing business or anything like that. I think I'm maybe a better judge. That's the other thing too. It's like it depends where the praise is coming from, right? Like if I get praise from somebody who has more skill than I do and is doing something that is comparable, right? Like somebody who understands and has gone through it, then it means much more than someone from like your mom.
Yeah.
Like I know so many friends who like struggle with this. Like my parents don't understand what I do. I'm like, dude, they never will. Like, especially like I know if like for me is like I don't ever expect my parents to understand what I do, and I don't really expect to get a lot of praise from it. But for them to tell me great job, it's like, okay, like what are we measuring that off of? It's like I know what I'm measuring it off of, but I know it was involved in the process. It's like, I know my brain thinks about this all the time, and so like for me it's like when I know somebody who can relate to that same thing, getting that I guess praise means a lot more. So I would say the majority of it that you'll probably get is probably like may not mean much. Yeah. Versus like
It could also be a negative feedback too, in that I don't want to say negative, perhaps that's too strong a word, but I think when praise begins to accumulate, it could be an indication that your environment isn't sufficiently challenging.
Yeah. That's the other thing is you can get demotivated too. It's just like, everyone's telling you, like I said, the other thing was like, you have a friend who's lazy who tells you really work hard.
Yeah.
And you start believing that. Everybody starts telling you that. It's like when you stop working hard, it's like, oh, well, everyone told me I work hard. I don't really need to work that hard anymore. I can kind of like cap it off like how much, like I perceive the limit to be a lot lower than it actually is, and I don't need to push any harder. So like you can get it's a carrot. You got to be careful because it's kind of like trapping.
Especially the working hard one. That's such a peculiar.
Like, what are we basing that even off of? Like, just because you work a bunch, like, does that mean you're like actually doing anything?
Yeah, and
like,
also
chasing your tail all day. Like, you work hard, but like, all right, what are we perceiving as hard? Is like
that's like porn. Working hard is like porn. Yeah. Like it's just like
it's masturbation. Yeah,
it's like Gary V, YouTube, Instagram. Like it's just
That's actually a good way to put compliments sometimes. It's just like some people just really want their dick touched by other people.
Yeah.
Or, your pussy, whatever you want to talk about.
Whatever your fancy
it's
is.
like, this just feels really fucking good. But, like,
it's
if everyone's touching you all the time, you kind of get used to it. And then,
and then
start looking to get fucked anymore or do the fucking. You know what I'm talking about?
Fair enough. You know what I'm saying? Know what I'm saying? It's, yeah, man. It's, it was so funny, too, because I used to get the hard work thing a lot in my previous career. And now, because I'm dual career, I still kind of get it a fair bit. But if anything, now, because I work harder than I've ever had in terms of hours and just how busy I am, I feel like I'm actually, like, now I know that hard work is not always in a appropriately...
Some people just get off on hearing that.
Yeah, it's not an appropriately used term because, like, I'm working really hard and I've never felt like I'm going nowhere fast more so than now.
Yeah, it's like what you're saying, I think, is like, you can work, you're like working hard, but like, are you even productive? It's like you're spending 40 hours to move an inch.
Yeah.
I know a lot of people like that too, is like, oh, I'm busy all the time. And it's just like, why are you like all the time? Like, you're doing, to me, maybe.
Also, too, it's like...
Depends how you want to live your life, but...
so perceptive, too, because, like, I used to roof.
Yeah.
Like, there's nothing that I fucking do
That's
now.
hard work. Yeah.
That is remotely as difficult as fucking roofing. That's one thing my father... I always joke with my father that his number one thing, his number one motivation as a parent was to ensure that I knew perfectly clearly that life fucking sucked. That was his number one job. And I get it. That motherfucker has done a great job of doing that.
Yeah, mission accomplished.
I remember... I had just drunkenly broken my hand.
Yeah.
So I was in a cast, and I was working, and there's the middle of the winter. We were doing a roofing job. So we would get to the roof at like 5 a.m. We would get big blow torches and melt all the fucking snow. Yep. Then we'd shovel all the water from the melted snow off of the roof, and then we would get like 4 hours of roofing in, and then cover it all back up for the night because it was going to snow again.
Yep.
And I remember waking up at like 3:30, 4 o'clock in the morning. My hand was fucking throbbing because it was cold, and the broken bones were still fusing.
Yeah.
And I had to get up, and I was listening to the wind whip outside, and it gets fucking cold in the Poconos in the winter.
Yep.
And knowing that not only do I have to go out there in the next 10, 15 minutes, I'm going to be out there for 9 hours.
Yeah.
And then I'm going to come back, and I'm going to sleep, and I'm going to do it again.
Yeah.
And there's no end in sight.
Yeah.
Like, that changed me. Like, I will never bitch about hard work again. Like, I never really get complainy about hard work now. I get very complaining about I don't feel like this is utilized. I don't feel like there's any utility in the work that I'm doing. I don't feel like it's leading anywhere. That's more my criticism of myself now, more so than, oh, I'm not working hard enough. Like that.
You're not doing work that's specific to like what you feel like you need to
Correct.
do. Yeah. You feel like you're just doing busy work.
Yeah, busy work, or just like working really fucking hard on something that is a dead end. Yeah. Or something that is it's tough, man. We're getting to that age too. I mean, it's TikTok.
Yeah. Sometimes you gotta like earn your lumps or whatever, but like after a certain amount of time passes, like you kind of got to question. It's like, is this actually a good use of my time? I guess. Yeah.
My biggest fear is that I just don't. I had a list of items that I wanted to try professionally back when I was in my late teens, early 20s, and I got to give myself credit. I've tried a majority of them, but none of them have. So far, I haven't found that thing. Yeah. That's like, this is what I'm going to do for 30 years, 40 years, 50 years. Like, this is my thing. Haven't found it yet. So my greatest fear is more like...
not finding that.
Is there not a thing? Is it me? Is there something wrong with me that I'm just disregarding all of this stuff? And is there just like a little bit of sacrifice involved in like, well, I guess this will be the thing?
It could be something like, for me, it came out of like necessity. I feel like, some people find that through like, you have to make this work. In order to make it work, you can love something, but like, when you're can't like, you have no fucking, escape route. Like, this is your only option, and you have to like, keep working at it. Mm. It's different. Whereas for you, like, it might be through the accumulation of multiple activities that you are able to come to some like level of understanding of what your specific interests might be. It might just be like we go through a different route of doing it.
Is there a thing in your life that you oftentimes think, man, I'd like to give that a try?
Yeah, plenty of things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's one?
I would like to do like.
I'm talking professionally.
Oh, professionally.
Like maybe I'm not Derek the personal trainer. Maybe that's not going to be my thing.
I think it would still be in that realm. To be honest, I like fucking training people. I like teaching people.
That's great.
I like being with people because that's the other thing too. Is like I like my job because I'm like. I work, I think, really well when I can be one-on-one with somebody and like be kind of like intimate. We have a history that kind of like goes back and forth, and we can be like we're like, for example, like if we work in an office, it's like we have all these like barriers between us getting to know one another.
Yeah.
Like, you know, we have to worry about like, you know, the politics and everything like that going in a gym. It's like people just want to kind of like let loose.
Yeah.
And I know that, and we can like really like shoot the shit and get to know each other, and like, you know, you can, like when I was younger, I wanted to be like really involved in like psych, because I was just always really interested in like why people make the decisions that they do, and like kind of like what makes them tick and shit like that. So for me, in some aspect, that's kind of like like every person you train, right? Like I can write the most perfect training program, but if it doesn't stick with that person and like what makes them kind of like what fits their lifestyle, one, but also is not like, I don't want to say it has to always be interesting, but it still has to click with the person.
Yeah.
It's not that good to begin with. So like it's still something within that kind of like idea where I'm still like working with somebody one-on-one, but I think it would still honestly be like, cause I have thought about that before.
It's profound, isn't it, though, to take a moment and just think about how incredibly different your life could be if you had made that one decision right now.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you could, like, you spend all this time training people and accumulating clients and learning about this business. You could just as easily not.
Yeah.
There's a reality where you were like, fuck it, I'm going to, I don't know, manage hotels.
Yeah.
And that becomes, now, like, it sounds ridiculous. I picked something random. But, you know,
just imagine myself walking around with this little fucking bow ties.
Little name tag.
Yeah.
With the vest. You got to have the vest. I don't know why, but I envision any hotel manager with a vest.
Yeah.
Like a white button-down shirt, maroon vest.
Yeah.
That's the hotel manager.
What? I was...
gold name tag.
I say I was a good server. I was expedient, I would say. And
Okay.
I was very detailed, but it was also... yeah, it's another story.
Yeah, it's... it's... I envy you. I envy you a lot that you have found that one thing. And I see a world where training could have been that thing for me.
Yeah.
I wonder if it was the system that I was operating within that, because the number one thing that prevents me from being able to say that is my one thing was that I did it at the expense of my own health.
Yeah.
And I that terrifies me. Like the way that I feel now when I go into the gym, where I feel like it's my place to escape again, where I feel like it's almost like the most expressive hour and a half, 2 hours of my day.
Yeah.
And I look forward to it. It's the first thing I think of now when I wake up. It's like, oh, what am I doing today? When do I get to go to the gym? I can't lose that again. I mean, for the sake of my own physical health, my mental health, I'm just getting back into the place where I feel like physically competent again.
You used a funny word there. Not even a funny word, but like specifically listening to what you said. You said express yourself.
Yeah.
Maybe a part of it too. And I'm not trying to like sit here and psychoanalyze you, but like
I like being psychoanalyzed.
Okay, well maybe I am then. Maybe part of it is also too is like you liked it so much because you felt like you were alone when you did it. You felt like you could be very expressive.
Sure.
In yourself in doing it. So maybe that is just like the benchmark for expression right now. And it still can be that, but there may be something, there likely is something, right, that you can, because how expressive really is like lifting weights. It's really just kind of like, you can look at it, like there's definitely times where I go into it and it'd be like, you know, I feel like Kai Green, and I'm just like tripping acid.
Yeah,
I'm
I mean,
fucking like lifting weights, or there's some times where it's like pure aggression, you know.
Sure.
But like, there's so much more to that. Like, we're so much more than just these polar ends.
For me, the expressive part of it is that you are manufacturing a person that previously only existed in your head.
Yeah.
And you are manifesting that version of yourself now in reality.
Yeah.
That is the beautiful thing. Because, like, you know, to see someone who's reached who's gone on a fitness journey or a strength journey or whatever their physical capacity they're looking to develop is, you know, they're externalizing the fact that they have discipline.
Yeah.
They're externalizing the fact that they're motivated. They're externalizing the fact that they have drive. I mean, the list goes on. all these positive qualities are. It's almost like you're putting that on display for the world, and they otherwise would not have known.
Yeah.
Right. And that's the beautiful thing. And I guess I could also, unfortunately, mention that as my frustrations with other aspects of life increase, my desire to go to the gym increases as well.
Yeah, well, you want that familiar. Maybe you just want the familiarity too. I mean, like, dude, it's fucking training. Like, it feels great. Like,
Yeah, it's hard for me to find. I don't think I'm like nuking the rest of my life just so that my training feels great. But it's going back to what we're talking about as it relates to the interference with my own training and being a trainer. I can't lose that again. And for that very reason, I hesitate to ever say that I would be a full-time professional in that field again, because I can't afford to lose that again. I simply cannot.
Yeah. It's
but sorry to cut you off, but
sorry, no, it's okay.
Cannot.
Yeah.
There's that fucking list again.
Cannot. Yeah. I mean, like, you can maintain it. It's just like right? It's like if you go from like 0 to 100, yeah, it's kind of hard. Right?
Yeah.
Like if you just like filled your book overnight. Like that was like that's like a really important thing. It's like, how do you manage your time? Like, what does it take for you to keep that passion alive? That's probably a good question, right? If you're just keep doing the same things you did, like, what, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, then it's like, yeah, dude, you get fucking bored as shit. My thing to it, though, is like, I know a lot more than I did 5, 6 years ago. I know more than I did 10 years ago, right? So it's like, as you train people, you might not train a bunch of people, but like if you keep staying curious, right? Like you kind of keep that mystery alive, or you kind of keep realizing how deep the fucking rabbit hole goes.
Yeah.
And like one of the things I do when I train people is like, this is not a hard and fast rule, but like there are some things that I do that are kind of like, I have a hunch, and I have like some sort of like maybe like experiment or something that I think I know, but I don't understand. But like I've tried it on myself, but I need some other people to. And I have some like lab rats. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That is like definitely one way that like helps keep that going. Because like I said to you before, is like my dad when I was younger, he's like just find what you love to do and like then just be happy and you'll you know, I forget what exactly did he say. He's like, yeah, if you find what you love, you'll never be, you know.
Never work a day in your life.
He would like repeat it like, Jesus Christ, can you shut up already? Like,
it's great that he did that.
It's really good that he did that, for real. Like I'd have like friends over and he'd be like, you know, it's like, you know, going on and on about it. I'm like, all right, I get it, but like that was like the biggest thing. Like,
did he follow that his own advice?
No, not at all. He couldn't decide. He had too many options. He was like sitting at the diner, like, you know, you're like, dude, like everything on this fucking menu sucks. Like, what do you like?
That's tricky though, because like,
1 second, I'm gonna fix my hat.
All right, go for it. Hold on.
All right, we're good.
Oh, I got a lot of
Wii Fit menu.
I got a lot of toys on here, man. I got a.
I got a voice changer.
Turn that.
So
one
I
off.
could do that.
That's disgusting.
What else can I do in here? Oh, I think these are sound effects that are very relative to a guy that Rick and I used to know. Oh no. Okay, yeah, that's the reverb. I have to have the USB in there to have the other sound effect.
Gotcha.
Anyways, you were saying.
What was I saying? Yeah, no, I mean, so yeah, my point to that was like, yeah, you have to keep like stoking the fire. Like, it's like, oh, I found what I like. This is it for the rest of my life. I don't have to do anything now. It's like I don't have to work for the rest. My point is you have to pay attention to the wording there, because the wording is really important. You'll never work a day in your life. Well, I might never go to like 9 to 5 every day in my life, but I actually have to like work at home and like spend my time furthering my interest in that. And that's not a job to me, right? But like, it still is like work, right? Like there's some times where I'm like, I don't really feel like reading like, you know, about like, you know, exercise science, or like opening up this like super training. Like I've had that book forever.
Mel Siff.
Yeah, or like, you know, I don't want to sit here and like.
That's Mel Siff, right?
Yeah, Mel Siff. I think Vergashansky too.
That's Vergashansky. I was gonna say Zatursky.
Yeah. You know what? It might be. I always mix them up too.
I still got it.
Russian guys.
I still got it.
Yeah, Russian guys. You know. Anyway, like, yeah, but you kind of like. Yeah, you kind of have to do that, but it's also like it serves your best interest in like your satisfaction with your job, especially when you're able to connect to something like, oh, that's what he meant. Like, okay, that's how I'm gonna kind of. And I'm like, the other thing too is like some of that stuff is like, that's the other thing too is like, I don't even have to really like know a lot of that because I'm mostly training people for like Gen Pop.
Yeah.
But like, I'll tell you what, like,
it's more for your own training.
it's more for myself, but I kind of like, I don't like spit this at people, but like, sometimes we'll do things like in a training environment that are like, well, how the fuck did we do that? Like, kind of give them a little like bait or something like that.
This is
And
fucking
like,
how.
Yeah, and they're like, oh shit, that's
Because
really
your
cool.
boy read
They-
his
they
SIF.
They get interested, you know what I mean? And that's like just one way you can kind of like get interested. For example,
Yeah.
Joe, who I train.
Yeah.
Today we PR'd his deadlift, and it was the first time we did any kind of like heavy deadlifting since like quarantine, like 6 or 7 months. And all the work that we had done, like me training him virtually, like literally on the phone, was like just making movements like better, cleaner, crisper.
Yeah.
And like just kind of like basic kind of like pushing work and volume, just getting better and doing more of that. He pulled like 400 pounds today.
Jeez, Joe.
He hit his
Slow the fuck down, dude. You deadlift more than I can.
Yeah, right. It was like fast too. Like he finished it. I'm like, he had more. And I know he had more. But it's a funny thing too. Is like because like everybody's a little bit different. With him, I was like, yo, I just want you to just find that fucking like the dark place. Just go there for a little bit and like
see fucking Trump's face, man.
Yeah,
just deadlift.
He just pulled it so easily, like yeah, because there's especially with like beginners, like sometimes like I'm not big on like maxing out all the time, but I think with beginners too is like something might feel heavy, but there's something really important about that, like kind of like psychological preparation. That is like so much more important than just like, you can do like, for example, like a rep max test, and it can tell you theoretically your max is like, I don't know, like
it's
like
not quite
500 pounds. It's not, it's not quite the same because like, say you're like me and you're like, you're happy to go for reps all the time, but like maxing out is somewhere where you kind of like get in your head a little bit.
The demon. You got to fight the demon.
It's kind of like, all right, well, what is this person I've been working with? Like, are they very familiar with doing like max out attempts?
Yeah.
If they're not, then it might be occasionally better to, with I want to say caution. It's not the word though. You're doing it deliberately. You're not just like doing it off the cuff, like I'm fucking, max out today, whatever. It's still part of the plan. But giving them that exposure and showing them that they can do it, and even if they don't get it, and let them go at it again, just maybe like one more time. They can, like, they know what it feels like. They know what it feels like to load up and stuff like that. Like, be really, really helpful.
I want to go back, take a step back here, and ask you a question about that menu.
Yeah.
The menu of options.
Yeah.
Let me float a hypothesis that I have.
Sure.
And it's a very specific one. It's not that. It's very, very micro, not so macro. Mm-hmm. But as someone who has that menu of options problem, which I do.
Yeah.
I often wonder if I would have been better off getting a very boring, predictable 9-to-5, because it would have quieted the noise of my professional career and would have afforded me the free time, the truly free time, the mentally clear time. Like every career that I've picked thus far has been somewhat entrepreneurial, which fills it with homework.
Yeah.
I'm inundated with homework, which is funny because nothing gave me more anxiety than homework when I was a kid.
Yeah.
And, because I'm an anxious person. Procrastination is about anxiety. It's not laziness. Laziness is like nihilism.
Yeah.
Right? But I often wonder that. Like my dad was like the reverse of your dad in that. My mom was more your dad. She was like, you can do whatever you want to do. Put your mind to it and do your best. She was that message giver. My father was just like, pick an easy fucking job with a 401k and work it for 50 fucking years. That's what you got to do. Like, be a My dad wanted me to be a pharmacist. He still beats that drum. He's like, should have been a fucking pharmacist. You'd have a 401k worth $1 million right now.
Yeah, but you probably know it'd be like, I don't know. It depends what you want in life. Do you want that like cushy? I mean, I never want to sit around and be like, well, I never took a risk. Like, what if? Or Just fucking. I also am like have enough ego where I probably want to be like I fucking did that myself, and I fucking like fucking beat my head against the wall for long enough rather than like I know I couldn't sit in an office because one I don't want to be told by some like Yoko when I'm being told what to do.
Man,
And I don't want to be sitting there fantasizing about what I could have done and the opportunities that I passed up. So I would say maybe, but it would have like only served to like fund your like
extracurriculars.
your extracurriculars or your like hustle that you wanted to actually get on, or to like give you that feeling of like, yo, I'm so miserable here, and it like would like kind of like light a like you would just know like I don't want to fucking die here. I don't want to like
I will never, ever, ever forget my shadowing of pharmacists. It was depressing, unlike anything. Like it was, I shadowed at a hospital and I shadowed at an actual pharmacy, like a CVS or a Rite Aid. I think it was an Eckerd's back in the day. They hit buttons. Like it's like, this is the pill you need. You got to put 40 in a vial and then hit this green button when you're done. And that was it. And they get paid outrageous amounts of money.
That gives me like fucking.
But it was just I was flabbergasted how little it was. And like you can look at that and be like, "Oh, it's a great gig," but like I'm going to sacrifice 6 years of my life so that I could just do that. And then just like it's truly it's that time for money thing. Right? It's like, yes, it's almost like a cheat code. Right?
Yeah, it's to me it's like, hey, if you just spend like let's say like your college tuition is $40,000 a semester. 1,000 times 4. Hey, if you just give us like $320,000, you don't have to think for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
Pills in a box.
And we'll pay you absorbent as fucking
You'll
self.
have a lot of money, but you'll actually like hate yourself for the rest of your life.
But you're gonna have fucking money, man.
And then you'll like I'm not gonna go this far.
No.
I was about to go too far there.
And hey, like it's not no discredit to pharmacists. Like I get it. I mean, I
know, yeah, for me, yeah.
Like, I just wanted a little bit more, or so I thought. I mean, now I'm actually getting to the other. I would have said, oh, I want a little bit more excitement from my life, but I've kind of had enough excitement at this point. Like now I'm in the whittling down phase now. I'm not in the add to it phase now. I've been adding for, there's like this mechanism that I've been able to identify through therapy and just through life experience of what actually causes my anxiety. Yeah. And there's this membrane that gets overburdened with input.
Oh yeah.
And it never counters with output. And output can represent many different things. It could be physical output. It could be conversational output, like we're doing here. It could be creative output. It could be any number of things. But especially in this climate where it is just so. I mean, the inundation of information is a real serious. Like I can feel it biologically fucking with me sometimes. Like when I scroll down on my phone and see the amount of notifications that I've been given. Yeah. I see the amount of like YouTube videos that are all very interesting to me and I want to watch them. And I have this little playlist called Watch Later that I add them to. And I looked at my Watch Later and it was like 1,200 videos.
Jesus Christ.
I'm like, I'm not gonna watch these. Like now the Watch Later list was supposed to reduce the anxiety of catching up on things. It's only increased it.
It's just more information that's just going in your head, and it's more information that bounces around.
Sure.
And it's just more stuff that it's like, is it really useful? You have no way of like categorizing how the priority of this information either too.
Yeah.
That's another thing. Is like just.
And I've tried, man. There's this software called Notion.
I'm familiar with, yeah. You told me about it, I think.
It's great, but like, at what point am I creating this incredibly complex system just to like manage my own information overload, which in and of itself is a problem.
Yeah.
So now I'm like creating an even more intricate system to justify my problem.
Yeah.
It's a weird world, man. There's a software solution for everything. There's no end to that chasm.
Like the constantly like chasing your password problem. It's like you forgot your password. Well,
there's a software for that.
Dude, it's like fucking endless. Like sometimes it takes like 10 minutes for me to log into a website, and this like thing that's supposed to be like fast and efficient, it just ends up being like, God, like I just want to throw my phone at a wall. Like it's just like endless.
What do you think about social media?
Well, okay. It's just like anything. Anything can be good or bad, but like I think most of us just tend to like abuse most things. And it's also too is like the way it's probably designed is not like designed to like pull an income. So it's designed. Most of it is free, right? So because it's free, it's like you're kind of the product.
Yeah.
Right. And it's like you are being
Your data is the product.
Yeah, you're being incentivized to be on there as much as you can.
Yep.
Right. So probably the vast majority of people are on there way more than they should. I feel like their psychology is kind of like molded around it too, like big time too. It's like that's what I talk about, like being just like overstimulated all the fucking time. Is like when people are like you're almost like acting for social media. Like your personality is like kind of like based on that. Like the things you do, like the things you like will post. Like I even probably like I have caught myself like doing it sometimes. Like you fucking idiot. Like
yeah,
like that's why that's probably the a reason why like I resented having a smartphone for the longest time too.
Yeah.
One, also I just didn't want to pay for it either. And two, I'm just like not good usually with keeping things like around, like technology around.
That's why I'm gonna fucking spend 10 minutes on this camera after we're done recording, figure out why I'm so fucking pasty white.
Yeah.
God damn it. But anyways, you continue.
I'm gonna say, yeah, it could be really good. Like, you now have the opportunity to like promote yourself as a business, as like an entity, or like, you can be really creative with it. But there's still some like rules you gotta play by, right? Like, you gotta like learn the ropes.
It's a substance that needs to be controlled.
It can be really good, but like for example, like the last 6 months is like sometimes I question like why. I mean, so the thing you mentioned about the output, right, is like you need to like have these conversations in order to feel like you bring that anxiety down, you bring that like that balance back to your life. But like some of the ways like I know people do that is like posting your like opinions and like your feelings in the wrong places, like your Facebook. It's like and that's where it starts to like mold people's like thinking. Is like somebody posts their polarized opinion on like Facebook or Instagram, whatever it is, and then the only thing it does is it gives them like validation, right? Is like a bunch of other people who have the same level of thinking. You just create this like echo chamber.
Sure.
Of like people just like who have maybe just as little of a researched opinion as you do, and have just as little time. That's the other thing. We don't like actually have time to like understand most of the things that are going on in the rest of the world. Like most of us are probably like, if you're somebody who actually makes good use of your time, what you actually do is probably like put the blinders on most things.
Yeah. So
like if you're any level of successful, probably is like you probably don't have that well researched of an opinion on things, unless it's like something you're really passionate about. But everyone has an opinion these days, and that's fine. But they're not all like.
And when you don't have opinion, you just seek to join a team.
Yeah, so like
which radicalizes everybody.
Some people just really want a team.
Yeah.
And then some people just like you never change somebody's mind. Right? Like I don't change people's mind just by like when I'm training people, like I don't try and change your mind. I don't change your mind like when we're face to face. I realize that doesn't work. Now you're adding a layer of like a screen behind it where like I can just scroll past your opinion in like 5 seconds. Like some people go in there looking for a fight, and some people go in there for validation. That's really all it is. So like again, like there's definitely like good uses for it, but like you have to be very aware of like where the pitfalls of it are too. Just like anything else, though.
I agree 100%, and
I don't love it. I don't hate it, but I definitely know like there's really good things and really bad things about it.
I would also add to that I think much like the way I described being sober versus using substances responsibly. I do think that when you encounter someone like myself who has punted on social media and avoids it like the plague, and has been singing its negative effects for a decade and fighting that fight, it in many ways is almost like sobriety in that it can be hidden behind, and sometimes it's suggesting that you are just not. I know for me, it's just not wanting to interact. Like there's just so many weird bridges that would need to be crossed. I mean, a lot of it's interacting with people from your past. I have this nasty habit of like not wanting to do that. Yeah. With the exception of, a few people. Obviously I have friends from every phase of my life that I'm still in touch with, but I don't want to talk to some fucking rando from high school who doesn't even know who I am at this point. It's I definitely think that there are a lot of potential positive. This is nothing groundbreaking, but I just think is number one thing I would say mechanically is the apps cannot be on your phone. I think that's toxic. You could go to the website, you can log in, but there has to be some barrier to entry.
Yeah, or like have a
Go on your desktop
You
or
have
something.
an allotted time that you set up, and that's something
Yeah.
like I don't do. Admittedly, I don't have an allotted time that like. Okay, I'm gonna allot my time self like 15 minutes.
Yeah.
To check this out. This like Instagram or Facebook out. That's something like again you can fit into like maybe like your time management like we were talking about before.
Yeah.
Yeah, most of the time, like, people would just be like, me included, will be like just like endlessly scrolling.
Yeah.
And like I know I do this too. Like I caught myself doing this the other day. Is I came home from like training the other day. I was just so fucking like kind of like spent. Like my brain was just like I just want to fucking do nothing. And it was probably like an hour and a half there while I'm sitting like eating my food and just like not in a rush to do anything. Just kind of like
Just shoveling it in and just scrolling on one.
Yeah. And to be fair, I guess to myself, like there was like I had been like doing shit all week, and I always like wanted an opportunity to like.
Yeah.
All right, it's like 6 o'clock on a Friday.
Deserved a
I
rest.
just want to like chill. I'm not doing anything tonight. I think I like watched a movie. Yeah, I watched a movie with my friend. I passed out at like fell asleep on his couch at like 9:30, 10 o'clock. So like it's not too bad, but like I definitely have like had those situations where you just like, especially like if you're not productive, like in like quarantine right now, like you don't have things that you're going through and doing like ritualizing your life or whatever. Like you just don't have things that you do. Like you just find yourself scrolling, and then like here's the thing is like you're just doing emptiness all day because that's like kind of just like really an empty activity, and that's fine to do it from time to time, but like that's where you start getting like anxious to me, or like that's just my thought. You start getting depressed, or you know what I mean. It's like you're just being shown windows of other people's lives who are purposely, trying to like front.
Yeah.
Not even just front on purpose. Like you're just comparing yourself, like you're competing with the Johnsons all the time, and you're
The staged moment in time. Yeah.
Yeah. It's like you can't really be objective on there. You kind of have to just assume you're being shown awesome snapshots. So yeah, I forget where I was going to end with that. I don't know.
I think overall it's it's definitely not this. It's something that needs to be monitored, just like any other potentially harmful substance.
Yeah, like we were talking about before. It's like to not ever use it. All right, well, you're probably missing out on some things.
For sure.
To always use it, you're probably missing out on some things. If you can find how much you need, right? Like we could talk about like training again. Like how much does this person need? You probably need some of it. Maybe like you run a business. It's like
So I was gonna say for professional use, I actually think that's like the healthiest way to utilize it.
Yeah.
Because it's not like just opinion sharing all the time. It's
it's productive.
It's value sharing.
Yeah, it's like you have customers, you have people who like you work with or something like that, and it's totally like something that like makes sense to do. But just to you should be checking on it just for the sake of checking on it.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I'll tell you one thing that I'm pretty sure is just decidedly terrible for our health and psychology are these fucking dating apps. Oh man, I think it's. I don't like the idea of just dismissing someone, like in mere seconds. Like you could be looking at a Nobel laureate, and you're like left, didn't like the photo, swipe left.
Yeah. Well, who's to say is like, it's like you're judging based off of very shallow characteristics. I'm judging you based off of like what like.
Your ability to filter
really,
an Instagram
the
photo.
main thing is like just pictures, but they're just very shallow characteristics, right?
Yeah.
And when that is like looked at as the most sought after way to date people to like get into a relationship, it's kind of like backwards. You know what I mean?
Wonder about like the evolutionary like positive selection that's going on via the advent of these dating apps. Like there has to be some negative, like I get Brett Weinstein or some sort of evolutionary theorist here to be telling like about how our mate selection is being all fucked up by this,
Well, I think you learn either way. It's like, because a lot of the times, like, I think I told you about this before. It's like, somebody can put in their bio, like, I love to hike and go camping. It's like, bitch, last time you went camping was fucking like 2 years ago, and you went for like one night or something like that. Like, it's just like, I told you before, like, sometimes I've gone on like dates where it's just like this person actually has nothing going on in their life, and they're like, you didn't get catfished physically, but you got catfished straight up like personality wise, or just like interest wise.
Catfish is like a representation catfish,
and it's like just enough to pull you out and like, oh, you're still hot, so I still hit it. But like, yeah. It's kind of like people get sick of that, and that's where like they probably go through like, I'm gonna delete this app, and it's like I'm tired of being disappointed. But then you kind of like learn how to like filter people better. And like, yeah, it's tricky, man. Because like also with those apps too is like, you're competing with like thousands of people or whatever. So like, it's kind of like, to me, the way I've done them anyway is like, you have to constantly be like, one, it's like kind of annoying, and it depends. All right, sometimes it feels like you have to do all the work, which is whatever. It's like I don't mind. Like I like the little hunt or whatever, but you have to like get things to like okay. And there's like it feels like sometimes it's like a fucking formula. Like I have to like if you spend like
or you could pay for them. You could go online and find like the Tinder formula.
Oh yeah.
Oh,
yeah,
I'm sure there's like some Ty Lopez motherfucker selling that shit.
There's probably there's a whole industry devoted to that.
The exact text to send.
What I meant by that is like if there's 1,000 people, like nobody's having like 2-week conversations with a girl they met on Tinder, and it's like I don't like, and you're going out with that person. Like one is like, how is your first date gonna go? It's like you already talked about everything.
Yeah,
right? It's like anything that sounds interesting, right? The fact that you're on Tinder to begin with is like there's so much ambiguity. It's like to ask somebody like, "What are you interested in?" Sometimes is like just like it's just a fucking pitfall. Like there almost has to be so much element of like mystery to it. Like it's just like, yeah, it's not a good place for like actually like communicating well. You have to like learn this like almost I feel like it's like subversive style of communication.
Well, so much of communication nowadays is through text message, and good God, is that not a productive way to go about that?
That's an art too. Is like
Ugh.
you got to be entertaining how you do that. Like you have to develop all these like skills that like I don't fucking want to.
I am so fine. I am A-okay with going to my deathbed being a shitty texter.
Yeah.
I will put it on record that I will spend zero amount of time for the rest of my life learning that skill. I don't give a single fuck.
Yeah.
It's just like texting for me is for information, not for conversation.
Yeah.
Hey, I'm outside. Perfect application of a text message.
Right.
Not like, hey, so I was thinking we could do this. Like, I don't know. Come up with a situation that one would be in. But like, call me on the fucking phone.
Yeah. Well, some people really hate talking on the phone for whatever reason.
I'm a shitty millennial in that regard.
Yeah. That's fine. It's not like you're not. I don't care.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's also too is like some people like they want to text all day and like it's usually fine. Just like, hey, I'm busy. I don't have. I know I can't do that because I need to be engaged whenever I'm doing, and my hours like at working and doing whatever I need to do. If I'm constantly like, like just checking my phone, like I can't possibly be engaged anything that I'm actually doing. So that's not an option really.
I'm the kind of person that number one, yes, it takes you, it distracts you. That's the number one thing about text messaging that I would say is that, especially when you're doing the all day thing. But one thing I would say is like I would just much prefer a world where like rather than the all day texting, hey, let's schedule a time you can give me a call.
Yeah.
Like rather than just this like pretending like we're actually giving each other time.
Yeah.
But yet we're not actually going to put anything on a calendar. We're just going to always have this ambiguous, ever present conversation that never ends.
Yeah. Well, it's the other thing too is like some people feel like they need that texting to like simulate that feeling of closeness.
Which is ironic.
But honestly, this whole thing is like a contradiction in itself. Is like because, like I might even like think about this thing because I have a way and this is going in my head, but I'm trying to articulate in a way that actually like makes sense and conveys the idea of how much of a contradiction this is.
Perils of human.
Yeah, like you need to play
expression.
this like you need to play this like you don't have to do this at all. Actually, you don't. You really don't. But some people like. Get anxiety. I know I definitely used to when like somebody doesn't text you or
you don't hear back
or
immediately.
You feel like you have to text somebody.
You have to not respond immediately because otherwise you're
or like you remember that old rule like you like after you date like going on a date with somebody you have to wait like 3 days. Like this all these like old like kind of like wives tales or something like that. Like is that even the right thing? Like I don't really think any of this actually is true. Like none of this actually matters if you're dealing with mature people, but the fact is I think no one really actually wants to be mature on Tinder or Bumble or any other, like, most dating apps probably. Because it's just really about, for the most part, like instant gratification. You don't really, like, want to be held accountable. Right? Like, they kind of, like, reward you to not be accountable because, like, well, you didn't like the person, you just fucked. Okay, well, just go back on the app and you have 100 likes.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like, all right, just start talking to the next one. You know what I mean?
I also think
it's how the app stays alive. So
it makes people pickier, too. Like, the longer you're on there, the more you like. It's very. This sounds horrible because beauty's in the eye of the beholder, but there's certain profiles that everyone's swiping right on.
Yeah.
And, there's also certain profiles that, probably are a little... I haven't used it in a long time. It's on my list of cannots, unfortunately, so that list continues to grow. But I don't know, man. It goes back to that evolutionary thing. It's like we're really screwing up the gene pool with some of our mating trends here. And it's like I fear a world where that is now the norm, and the pandemic has brought that reality upon us way quicker than it ever should have.
See, like I like see where you're coming from, but I also see the other perspective where I'm like 27 years old, but at the same time, like we just sound like a bunch of fucking like old men. And they're like, things aren't the way they used to be, and this is not natural, and you know what I mean? Like, yeah. So I don't know. Like, I definitely don't love it. I don't know if I'm supposed to love it either. I don't think, even if I didn't, nobody gives a shit.
Yeah. I mean, it's handy during a pandemic, I would imagine.
Yeah.
What the fuck else are you going to do?
For sure.
Well,
do I wish, like, it wasn't that way? Yeah, you know what I mean? Like, I wish I was not, like, judged based off, like, how my pictures look.
Yeah.
So I don't want to be like, I don't want to be sitting there fucking, I don't want to put time into that, you know? Like,
there's people who pay photographers to take photos of them.
That I do know. Yeah, like, that I do know. Yeah, for sure. I don't want to be, that's the thing, is like, yeah, it feels like you have to do shit I don't know.
Yeah. Not a fan.
You literally also just, like, don't. Like, there's no reason why you can't just fucking, like, date somebody, you know, probably is a little bit weirder nowadays, but, like, you know, chat somebody up. In fucking, like, grocery store or something like that.
Yeah.
I don't fucking know.
Well, that's like, I don't know. Unfortunately, now that it's like, I think we're getting into a world where it's like weird to not meet somebody online.
Yeah,
like,
I almost used to be like embarrassed when I was younger. Now it's like so fucking normal.
Yeah, now it'd be weird. Like, ugh, you talk to somebody?
Yeah, like nowadays, like I look for opportunities to just like talk to people in public.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Because it's just so like refreshing.
Well, we're shitty millennials in that regard, I think.
I don't think I think people really do crave that though. At the same time.
Well, that's one thing I could say with clarity about this pandemic is this whole from home.
But the thing is, that's the other thing is we're all kind of like kind of a little autistic now. I feel like too.
Yeah.
Like I was like talking to like some of my clients too, and they're like, they just like noticed like they would have like family gatherings. Just notice they would have like weird like isms and just like weird things that they would start doing. Like just noticing they'd been in the house for like too long, and like I feel like probably like just us with the amount of time we spend on our phone and inside and kind of like just the way we communicate nowadays. Like we're we have some of those characteristics, you know, as far as communication goes, but I think definitely we're leaning towards that side sometimes. I think our just brain is changing and our like hardware or like the environment is changing and our hardware is not quite upgraded yet, and we're in that like awkward hair phase where it's like not long but it's not short and it just looks ugly.
You just gotta really do it up with gel. But you use that like shitty gel
like I do. We're a hat. We're a beanie.
I wanted to get your. I wanted to joke with you a bit before we wrap this thing up.
Oh, we haven't been joking. Okay,
it's
need more jokes.
We're very serious.
Yeah.
Very serious tone here. But the Batman complex.
Yeah.
Because it ties perfectly into the social media thing.
Yeah.
The pandemic and being removed from these our typical social groups.
Yeah.
It's a factor in this whole social media conversation. It's a factor in why I've been so fucking hesitant to, like, I've done like 30 of these.
Yeah.
40. I think by the time I post this will be the 47th episode. I've never told anyone anything. Mm-hmm. Like, we got some decent amount of listens. We got a couple thousand listens and all this kind of stuff. But, like, you know, when you start a business, which this effectively would be a business if we were to take it as seriously as probably like to take it.
Yeah.
You know, it all comes down to the fundamentals, right? Like when you're starting a personal training business, who's the first group of people that you reach out to? Your sphere of influence.
Yeah.
You become a real estate agent. You're going to sell some houses. Who's the first group of people you reach out to? Your sphere of influence. People that you know, like, and trust.
Yeah.
And, you know, I think the problem is that, like, the Batman complex, for those, well, it's everyone because I made it up, who doesn't know what that is, it's the romanticization of self-development in the darkness.
Yeah.
Which the reason we call it the Batman complex is because of Bruce Wayne.
Like you're trying to be a monk.
Yeah, like Bruce Wayne has this incredibly appealing story in that he was this incredibly flawed, down on his luck, you know, thrown to the dogs guy, goes to like Tibet for 15 years and comes back Batman,
Yeah.
right? Like, what an amazing story.
It's like the story of like Buddha, though, kind of.
Yeah, like you come back and you present yourself as this finished, amazing product and be like, you were this huddled mass when you left and now you're Batman.
Yeah.
And I think that it's a big reason why someone like myself has punted on social media, because for me it's inherently less interesting. Let's continue to use the ridiculous example of Bruce Wayne. Like, what's more romantic? What's more appealing? The idea of going to Tibet for 10 years, or like Bruce Wayne on Instagram Live? Hey everybody, it's me, Bruce. We're here in Tibet. That's my guy Ra's al Ghul. He's gonna train me to do some fucking shit.
Yeah.
Check in today. Coming the Bat Part 2. Woo!
Yeah.
Turns his phone off.
Yeah.
Like, this whole documentation of everything is like, I used to like the stories of like Muhammad Ali going to the Poconos for training camp and no one would see him for a year and he would come back and beat.
Yeah, that's cool shit, right? Or like
Yeah.
Rocky going to
fucking Russia.
I think
Right?
he was in Russia, right? I don't know. I remember
Rocky
like,
4 was in Russia. Yeah.
pulling the sled in the snow and just kind of like
the log.
training alone and all that kind of shit. Yeah.
Or
Or like even the Karate Kid, right? Like he's carrying the fucking buckets of water and shit.
yeah, like, or just this idea of, I mean, it's any hero's journey. It's any hero's story. There comes a period of time where they are absent from the world.
Yeah.
And then they re-present themselves to the world as this incredibly unlike their previous selves version of themselves.
Yeah.
And, Iron Man fucking captured in the cave.
Link in Ocarina of Time.
There you
he
go.
pulls the sword, and 7 years later, he's like, "You're mature enough to handle the evils of the world."
And
whatever
the
that
list
means.
goes on,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, it's like over and over again.
And it's this obsession with self-development in the darkness. It's something that I've succumbed to a lot. And when I think about, like, even talking about, like, training is kind of the perfect microcosm of the positive and the negative component of this, because it's a positive, and that's literally the representation. If I go lift tonight by myself, ain't nobody else there.
Yeah.
It's me in the darkness,
And
sometimes
I like
literally.
that a lot too. Yeah, just put on like the music that you want.
Yes.
Turn the lights off. Like, dude, there's something I like more sometimes than just turn the fucking lights off and like listen to some like metal and just fucking like it's so nice.
But you corner yourself in this really difficult spot in that when is the time?
Yeah. you
When
gotta
is the
know-
time to turn the lights back on?
Yeah, you gotta know when something no longer suits you or like fits you and like you like cling to it. You know what I mean? Like that's it's like it becomes a point where like there's definitely a point where like I've been like fucking living this like like that like I can like definitely
It's appealing.
it totally like I live that same thing. Like I love that, man. I totally love that. It was like, definitely romanticize that. But comes to a point where you like stunt your own growth, and you gotta like recognize when that's happening, because like as you're super specializing in something, right?
Yeah.
But you're also ignoring a whole list of you're negatively developing in some aspect. Like, you're like that, and you're in the forest for 6 years, right? Well, you haven't talked to people in like 6 years. You're gonna come out walking around like a savage. Like you need to like,
Well, even this podcast, right? Like, would this is a stupid example, but it's very applicable to what we're doing now. What if we had taken another 6 months, done even more research about the production quality, read a shitload of books so the conversation topics were just innumerable, right? Like, you could always punt that. You could always kick that can. You can always kick it a little bit further down the road and be like, it'll be better once we do this. It'll be better once we do that.
Yeah.
And, it's very tricky because also, too, a lot of that, when you do, for lack of a better phrase, self-develop in the darkness, like if I had shown this podcast, I think we did a reasonably good job here, and I showed it to people that you knew in high school, would they recognize, number one, would they recognize you physically? Number one, would they recognize you psychologically, in that what you had to share in any way was similar to the version of you that they knew?
Oh, yeah.
That's a lot.
Yeah.
That's weird. It's weird to have to confront, like, you're an incredibly different version of yourself than you were. And you would think that that's exactly what we want to do with the Batman complex, right? Like, oh, you fucking kids. And I didn't even get made fun of in high school. I was one of the,
you got to ask where it's coming from. I think it's definitely true. Is like you want to be better than everyone else, partially too.
Yeah.
But the other thing too,
a little bit of elitism.
Yeah, you want to be an elitist, but it's also like the other part is not like you're a perfectionist too, so you're really self-conscious about it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That's where like, oh, if I just give it like, you made examples like if we took 6 more months to get this right, well, then we're just pushing the ball further away. You know, like, yeah, it might be better, but like it doesn't flow organically. We have these like, we have a script. You know, it's like I've never been somebody who wants to like operate off of a script. I just want to like talk and just like, you know, just be.
Perfectionism, man.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's like it could be good, right? But like what I was saying, but
My views on perfectionism really changed when I saw, like, we always knew that it was a undesirable quality.
Yeah.
But I remember reading an article about the most likely causes of clinical depression. It was a science-based article, like it was research-driven.
Yeah.
In perfectionism was listed as one of the most likely causes of clinical depression.
Yeah, no doubt. I believe that for sure.
That really changed my view on this. Like, this is not some wives' tale.
Yeah.
Like, oh, you can't be a perfectionist. It's just you're gonna, end up disappointed. No, this is clinical research.
Yeah. Yeah, it's tricky too, man, because like sometimes like that's where I like having a plan.
Yeah.
That's where I'm going to talk about having a plan. Like this is where like I'll go back to coaching a little bit. Like if you have like somebody who's a perfectionist, right, and you're working with them, like I have definitely a couple of them that I definitely work with. And it's easy to identify, and they don't get everything right that you tell them to do. They beat themselves over it. And then like when it comes to like training, it's like, all right, well, it's some form of like stress. It's probably negligible, but like it's also like it is something. Right, but you think about how many times they do that during the day, and it's like this is actually kind of a big deal, maybe. And it's like, what is really important is to like, you need a way of instructing in a way that is like gives just enough information, and you can develop a plan based on that person, and you know how much of a perfectionist they are that allows them to like kind of like make mistakes.
Yeah,
it's fine, and it's like I had somebody, I have somebody I'm training right now. He's just running a hypertrophy program, but he's only been training a year. And he's lost a lot of weight. He lost like 50 pounds.
A shitload of weight.
And he looks pretty damn good, honestly. But he's like still like kind of like learning how to move.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But he has a good amount of volume. His calories are not super high right now, but I'm letting him kind of make mistakes. Like we did some stuff on like Tuesday, and he had another training session on Thursday. But he likes to do some like rock climbing and. He wanted to do some extra volume, and I don't remember what I said. I told him like you probably have enough to do there. I told him why, but I know myself too. Sometimes I'm going to do it anyway. But he couldn't climb today, and I was like, yeah, like dude, like you're just probably fatigued.
Yep.
Like, you just can't do it. So like, now for next time, like you're allowed to make mistakes. It's completely fine. But now and you can like make some more sound decisions for next time. So my point was like, yeah, that the perfectionism kind of like really fuck with you and cause a lot of stress. I can definitely totally fucking see that. But if you create like reasonable like little steps, you can kind of sometimes like you would disappoint yourself. You're just trying to make too big of a jump, too big of a step. You know what I mean? It's like, oh, I went to the gym today, and it's my first day ever, and I couldn't bench 500 pounds. Like, oh, I'm such a perfect. Like, no, you just didn't fucking plan. Like, no, dude, it's unrealistic.
Yeah.
Like, you didn't come up with a plan. Like, it's just maybe just
you got to periodize your life.
Yeah.
Well, motherfucker, we've been doing this like 2 hours.
Yeah.
That went fast.
Yeah, we didn't even talk about anything.
I know, right? That was the intro.
I feel like we had more to talk about, and we just kind of like went on for a long time.
Hey, well, as Stan Efferding says, you got to leave the gym wanting to do a little bit more. That way, you'll be more likely to come back next day, the next day, the next workout.
That was not yesterday for me.
Do you have any final words for the people?
Nothing.
No. Okay, moving on.
No, I got nothing.
I'm just fucking with you. All right. Well, we'll do this again.
Yeah, sounds good, man.
Godspeed, motherfuckers.
Godspeed.